All right, I think we're live.
Amazing. Should probably check. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
I can hear you.
Cool.
So I'm loving the bounce and the price of Hex. I'm loving how it's just like, so much more. We don't even have to think about it. So lovely.
Yeah, I was relieved bounce, having that being the first cascade downward for me to experience.
Yeah.
The trajectory is looking nice on that. It's interesting to see some of those sell orders. When it hits the sell orders, goes down a little bit, then jumps right back up with buy orders. It's kind of nice.
Yeah.
I've had so many of them on my stomach that it's just so good to feel this one this time. And I was just reminiscing. I had a chart hanging up here, and it was whenever the price was at 1.2 cents, and I was telling a friend it has already gone up to 1.4 cents, and whenever it goes back up to that 1.4 cents, blah 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 blah. Anyway, that was a good 10% of what we are now.
So Eco, you're getting the butterflies as the roller coaster's going uphill, huh?
Nah, it's
feeling it in your stomach as it's going up.
That's what I'm saying, is that I'm past the stomach stage.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
I got 4 friends I'm getting in this week, and I was hoping we wouldn't have to climb quite yet. I know we're due for another doubling, and I want to get them in before, not after. So hopefully we're not going to FOMO in. We'll see.
Yeah, I have a brother-in-law that 12 cents, like I said, it went down. It was at 15 cents. It went down to 12, and I said, hurry up, get in. And he waited, and maybe it'll dip back down for him to feel more comfortable on entry, but it may not.
I tell people, buy the top. Just buy it, because then you don't have to say you were lucky or anything like that. You have no story about how good you are. You're like I bought it the worst possible time, and I'm doing so well. Because that's like the faith you have to have in Hex. It's not like, oh, I hope I get this before the crash or whatever. It's like, no. I'll take the top. I'm patient. I can wait an extra 2 months.
One man's top is another man's bottom.
What was that, empty?
That empty? Sorry, empty.
What'd you say, empty? We missed it.
I just said that I like the doubling quantity. So I like my stakes to be doubled. I like, I don't have any free Hex, so I can't say I like to have my Hex doubled, but all my staking is doubled, so that's awesome. I will be doubled, let's say. And then, of course, I took the risk. It's not a big risk for you guys for the sacrifice, but for me, it's like, do what? For nope, what? For zero value, what? yeah. So yeah, I mean, if I didn't know Davin, there's no way in hell.
Yeah, did you just give me credit for giving you free Hex, or did you skip over that?
I need to say that he also gave me $70 worth of Hex. So that was the prime of the pump, and then I added at least a factor of 10 to that, because at the current time, no income. But yeah, at least a factor of 10 to that.
So Max or X-Ray Vision tells us that he'll join us when the Richard Hart stream that's going on right now is over.
Well, tell Hexray that they're just talking about watches.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long stream, but not much. It's fun though. I'm gonna watch it. I'm not gonna say I'm not, but that's more entertainment than important news.
I've been waiting all week for this,
Yeah, I figured that was the case when I saw what the topic was. It's like, I think that's probably a teaser, not unless he says at the very end, oh, and by the way, in 1 hour, we're going to do the airdrop. I doubt that will happen.
No, they're still getting the test servers up. So it's already that implies it's already behind schedule.
Yeah, because they said within a week, and it was like weeks went by already. Afraid. So yeah, so the test. I never saw the test servers. The announcement that the test servers were up. So.
No, he already went over that. So one of y'all has it when either Empty or I speak, we get feedback. I'm assuming it's Rogue.
It's probably me that you're getting feedback from. I don't have headphones on. I do have my phone padded in a towel, and usually that's sufficient, or else I can hold it out in space to see if the echo goes away. Here, let me try that. Not off in space, and if everyone remains quiet and then is talking, and see if he gets feedback. Okay, go ahead and try now.
All right, testing. No, I can sleep.
I'm going to mute my mic. Am I getting echo now?
You have headphones on. Why would it be getting echo for you?
Yeah, I don't know.
But it did turn off.
Do you have echo from me, Hex Dragon, now?
Not in this moment, no.
Yeah, I'm not hearing any echo anymore from Empty.
All right, I'm going to set it back down on the towel so I don't have to hold the phone. And do you hear an echo now, Hex Dragon?
I don't think so. Cool. Well, whatever. I'm happy. Sounds better.
Do you prefer empty or plain?
Well, like full and
EP, I don't know.
Is the glass half empty or half full, or is it just plain?
Empty plain implies a lot of space. Whatever you choose. Empty's good. I like empty.
I want to know what your location is. What are you doing right now? Because you're not on the property building right now.
You notice there's clouds and huge trees behind me.
Hey, try holding it out in front of you. I think that was better.
You like that better?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there's I went back to the cities to earn cash. So I'm in Olympia at the moment, and there's another cryptocurrency person here, and so Clayton from Wheaton Labs is also going to join us here. We're both going to earn cash while we're here, and then the guy who has cryptocurrency is going to make trips to Guadalajara for health reasons. And so, in exchange, for a house sitting, we get no rent and utilities, and we get to go earn cash because that's his way of supporting permies, permaculture efforts. So we show up, earn cash, walk away with 75% more, considering the prices of rent in the large cities. So that makes it really nice to walk away with. We use in a winter. I tell people I can walk away $6,000, and it's usually a little more than that. But I know for a fact people can make $6,000 in the cities and come back with $6,000 in their pocket. That's making the amount that they have to live and pay gas and food for too while they're in the city. So
go ahead. Put your phone back down the way that you had it because there was major echo.
How about that?
We'll try that now. But
I might.
So going into the city, making money, coming out with a load to then utilize for what, like 9 months?
No. So that's yeah. So coming back out, that's only last from May 15th to September 15th. So we're talking 4 months. So the rent that I pay at Wheaton Labs is actually divided by 4 rather than 12, so that it's not really, that yearly rent is actually only valuable 4 months. You know what I mean? Is practically valuable to me. Of course, it's a placeholder. You know, I don't lose my place. You know what I mean? So yeah, until I have a shelter built there and I have a decent income, then from that area, then there's no the rent is only valuable to me 4 months out of that year.
How far did you get on that shelter?
So I got up, see, eight. So that's 20 square feet of the wall of slip clay, and so then I stopped building. I finished cleaning up the Hillbilly Mansion plastic, and that
Yeah.
took a couple of days. That took like 3 days actually. And then I also patched my cistern because about 7 rocks fell down from the one side, and I patched it so it wouldn't leak. And so we'll see what happens now with my nice cistern. So yeah, I expect to have the walls up, the slip clay or slip straw, whatever you want to call it. I expect to have those done within the first month of my return there. So I'm hoping by June 15th, I'll have those walls complete. I'll also show up with a stainless steel barrel, a ceramic core for the rocket heater. I will also show up with DeWalt cordless or battery ran table saw, so that I can make flat boards very easily out of smaller wood. And then I will also show up with a bandsaw that attaches to a chainsaw, so it's a sawmill band mill sawmill rather than a swing blade type, which is easier for me to lug around because it's just handheld with 2 hands, and but it doesn't give you all the nice cuts that a swing blade could. It's still better than a sharp stick in the eye. Let's put it that way.
Cool, man. Thanks for saying all that. Thanks for getting us caught up on your thoughts and where you are. Hex Dragon, would you like to lead us on a path for today?
Sure, I'd love to. And also, we're going to need you to mute yourself in between when you're talking because the feedback is very distracting, unfortunately. So thank you very much for that. So yeah, I'd love to kind of how I facilitate regular meetings is go around really quick, introduce ourselves for those who haven't met us yet, like 1 or 2 sentences, and then we can co-create an agenda. So anything that we want to talk about, let's just like have a moment to like state it, and then we'll make sure we hit all those points for this video. So that way the listeners know what we're gonna be talking about and we kind of know where we're going. So I'm Hex Dragon, and I am building a network of regenerative communities. I have a fund where we use crypto for raising capital, and I turn all my friends into millionaires. So it's a pretty good life. For the agenda, I want to have a little bit of dialogue. I want to hear, so in the Telegram chat, I want to have a little bit of dialogue with Empty and what he heard me say about what I want in community, why that's not compatible with what he wants. At least that's how I interpret it. So I think that'd be a fun short conversation to have. And I'd like to actually hear that from each person. And context for that would be a lot of times we interpret what other people say by our culture or our background, and we don't actually hear what the other person is saying. And I see that very common with words like community, where people have been conditioned so heavily against the idea of living in a community that they often don't hear other people's ideas as soon as they use that word. So that's one point I have for the agenda.
Okay.
And, we'll just do everything like kind of like clockwise. So we'll go to Rogue.
Yeah, so by way of introduction, Rogue Herbalist, that's kind of the name. I said, hey, let's find something on Telegram to put down there, and I thought I liked that. I'm an aspiring herbalist. I've been doing it for years. Been into plants, gardening, growing, permaculture, and even touching into mycology, which works with the plant world as well, and I can still be considered an herbalist, I suppose, if I understand mushrooms even. But the thought that I've had over the years is it takes a really long time to be an herbalist, a rogue herbalist. I kind of don't like to walk the line with any kind of conventional pharmaceutical or mainstream ideas of how medicine works. So I say I'm a rogue herbalist. In my mind, it takes about 7 lifetimes or so to become a true herbalist. So I have many lifetimes yet to learn everything. So I know a few plants really well, and some things I know in general. I don't know the materia medica of all the herbals and the medicines out there that someone would know if they were maybe really well verbose in memorizing things, but I'm trying to learn the basic plants that are around me. I'm interested in community, of course. I think that that's kind of what we're all about. At some point, we need to work with each other. I'm interested into hearing the views of what someone says. Here's the size of a community. Here's the best community. Here's what it is. I've been part of. I have a wife and kids, so I've been part of the smallest nuclear, I suppose, community. And in our neighborhood, our current neighborhood that's attached to the grid, that has power and municipality, I've been part of that community. I'm part of a HOA community that's off grid, and I can see all the struggles and the disagreements with each one of those types as I've lived in it. But I know that's going to happen in every community that is anyone's going to be a part of it. We're humans, and that's how it's going to kind of play out in communities anyway. Also, let's see, on Twitter, I'm Hexoteric is my handle there. And then I have a company that I started called Ancient Earthways. It was going pretty good. We went to a few farmers markets. I created herbal remedies and was looking at doing some courses for herbalism or off-grid living or unschooled type gardening ideas. Ancient Earthways, there was a website. I forgot to renew it, and so it was taken over by Alibaba had registered it and put a bunch of porn links up. And so they wanted me to pay a lot of money to get that back. But I thought, you know what? I'm just going to kind of go with whatever. Maybe I'll find some other website, but I'll keep the name Ancient Earthways and kind of push that. But I've been doing some entrepreneurial type stuff. I'm working right now in the tech field. So that's where I have this balance that I'm trying to do between the natural world and the tech world. And where is that balance and where do we find that? So I'm really good at tech, which is why I'm into the cryptocurrency. I understand the blockchain, not quite as well as, say, Richard Hart or the experts or developers, but I work with developers as my full-time job, so I understand their thinking. But I really have a passion for natural things. So that's kind of where I'm coming by way of introduction. Hex Dragon, I really was intrigued by some of the things you're saying. I, of course, am also intrigued by Empty Plains' thoughts, Eco's thoughts. All our discussion, I really liked it. I think we can kind of say, hey, here's where the understanding of what we're thinking and our worldview comes from and where we want to go. And there's always going to be another side to something. And what works best for someone else may not work for another person. So I'm happy to help join the conversation as far as the discussion that Hex Dragon and Empty Plane may have on some of the disagreements in their thoughts.
Yeah, we're all here because of Hex. We all have that in common. I've got much less words to say, I think. I live in the downtown area of a town that I grew up in. It's in the suburbs now of Austin. And so I'm a suburban boy. That's where like my perspective of community has come around. I lived in the dormitories all 4 years of college architecture education. And I got into permaculture or studying permaculture. You guys can hear me all right? Right? Okay, cool. And And so I'm just very passionate about appropriate paths in the built structure. And so whenever it is that we're being screwed around with economics, then I look for solutions, and Hex is one of those, in my opinion. So I have resources, both Birthright in my hometown, and then Hex now. And so I want to utilize these things. I am unmarried, so that's where I come from. Unmarried and no kids. I'm the baby of my family and all of my parents' friends. I'm just watching everybody else do their thing in the world, and I'm able to witness it and learn from it. So I met Empty Plane because I gravitated to a man's voice who was influential in the space of permaculture through the internet. And then just like I gravitated toward Richard Hart's voice when he too educated me via the internet. And then that's how I met these other guys. Yeah. So Hex Dragon I haven't met in person, but Rogue Herbalist I met in Las Vegas. And he invited me back to his place in order to continue to investigate this, what we see as life paths, right? So very pleased to be amongst y'all. Next.
Empty, you know, unmute yourself.
Unmuted now. So, I'm here because I'm interested in permaculture. Permaculture, I like one definition, which is natural systems feeding systems, natural system, in an ecological way, ecological beneficial way. So I grew up turning alkaline clay into deep, rich soil that we ate our food from and out of our garden. I grew up having rabbits, geese, ducks, goats, cows, sheep, pigs that we would eat, use their manure to help create that nice soil for our garden. We didn't have any trees by the time I left. We had popular trees which were well over 20 feet tall, So my folks were kind of like conservative hippies. They had very fundamentalist ideas, but they were doing everything the hippies were doing, composting, growing their own food, so and making sure that we ate as natural food as possible, organic food, before the ate our own organic standard. So that's the baseline. And I grew up, first 4.5 years, I grew up in the city, which I remember. And then we moved to the country to avoid all the end of world Vietnam issues that were going on at the time. Again, my mom and dad were conservative, and they didn't want me exposed to that kind of thing. So we moved to the country. We didn't have any electricity, and we had an artesian well, which means the well naturally flows by itself. So when people had to pump water out of the ground, I was astounded. What? Do what? Our well is better than that. It comes out by itself. So, but we got plumbed in. We eventually got electricity. So I'm familiar with, as part of my childhood, with that transition and the before and the after, So I both like cities and I like remote areas. Of course, I prefer remote areas for the majority of the time, and then to share ideas and to meet new people and to get to keep rejuvenated. Cities are nice, there's no doubt about it. You can find all kind of interesting people that you run across in remote areas. So I think that covers kind of where I'm coming from, Of course, I am not a whale or close to being a whale. I'm just a little shrimp, according to Hex. So the Hex scale. So I'm all right with that. So, that's not a. We'll see what happens over time. I don't know. I have no idea. I can tell that you guys have made well for yourselves using Hex. Maybe that time has passed. Maybe it hasn't. But I'm willing to risk. You know what I mean? I'm willing to risk to see what happens. So, and then for you to couch for you to couch what I said as a disagreement, yeah, I think it's unfair. I just said we belong on different teams, and I'm not going to explain that. You and I can have a personal conversation about that on our face to face, one on one, but I'm not going to have a discussion about that in the group. I don't think it's appropriate. And the reason I don't think it's appropriate is because we can accentuate the differences, but I would rather not do that. I would rather talk about what different teams can do. So you said that you've been Hex Dragon. You said that you've been at this for 10 years. I've always been trying to cut my overhead down to nothing, so that whatever wage I have a large disposable wage, instead of having $50 disposable wage, no matter what my income is. You know what I mean? So because of that, I've always lived, well, not always, but 90% of the time of my adult life, I've lived in houses that have strangers in them that I don't know from my childhood. I just met them, and so, and then of course the current communal experience with Wheaton Labs, I went into a fraudulent community in which I hung out. That's where I built an Adobe Dome. But those guys, that was a true scam from the very get-go. You know what I mean? But the community still existed. The people still interacted, and that's Wheaton Labs is a completely different thing. The leader there is sincere about what his attempts. He's certainly not taking all of his money and running off to Hawaii every summer or every winter. You know what I mean? Or buying himself the best of whatever he might decide that he thinks is worth it his time. So I've had a large experience with both community and what I know I want from community. So when I hear certain ideas that I know aren't exactly in line perfectly, I know it right away. And I'm happy to discuss those things with you separately and face to face, because it'd be a good discussion. But it's not relevant in the group discussion because I don't want to create schisms. I'd rather create teams. You know what I mean? So this is my approach. So hopefully you'll forgive me being arrogant and rude and refusing to have that conversation. But I like to do it face to face, one-on-one.
Well, it's kind of an interesting perspective you're sharing. And I respect it. The idea of themes is we need to know, in my opinion, what the difference in similarities are between the teams. So, for example, I'm assuming we're all playing regenerative. So we're playing a regenerative sport, and we want to produce food abundance and all that. But aside from that, the reality. Oh, will you mute yourself again, please, EP? There are so many ways of doing community and even doing regenerative. So, for example, for the land trust that we've put together, you need to be certified regenerative, but you can choose who certifies you. It could be Alan Savory. It could be biodynamic. It could be regenerative organic. Those are different flavors of regenerative, and different people might feel more called to a certain one of those. So it's helpful to know what your team represents. Do we represent biodynamic? Do we represent traditional organic? Those different things. Also, kind of like for what Rogue is saying, is like he's really interested in the different community sizes. So you could want to be a part of a very small eco village, or you could want to be a part of something that's super futuristic, like an arcology that Paulo Soleri created. So we have so many ways to go and to recreate the diversity that the world we've lost through not just monoculture, but through mono society. We have taken all these different cultures. Like monoculture doesn't just affect plants; it affects our culture. What culture do we want to bring back? Do we want to have a spiritual community that focuses on tantra? Do we want to have a community that focuses on psychedelics? There's so many of these different things out there, and what I like to advocate for is bring this awareness of the diversity that exists. And it's not just community, communism, socialism all in one bag, and that's all there is. It is that I want to honor and all the different traditions that humans may have had, and some people want to bring back and reintroduce into our culture. So for me, discussing the differences in our desires is not a debate. It is a discussion about the different possibilities that exist all around us. And I want to highlight those possibilities because if you grew up in a city, you're not going to be aware of most of this stuff. If you haven't traveled or had many experiences, you aren't aware. So I think that's one of the services that we can provide to the viewers is what is actually possible with community. And when you have this abundance of options, what kind of calls to you? What do you want to play with first? And the reason I like to discuss a network of diverse communities is that you might think you know what you want until you have it, and then you realize that wasn't what you wanted. So what's next? And that was a lot of the fun I've had is I've traveled to different existing and futuristic communities to figure out what it is I want. And what I thought I wanted isn't what I want anymore. In truth, I don't know what the final thing I want is. So I want to be able to explore the different possibilities because I have spent a significant amount of my life in cities and not been exposed to very many different cultures, even though I am world traveled. I still have so much more to learn. So to simplify that again one more time, I think that the diversity and the differences are what rather is that diversity that we want to bring back into the world. So I don't see anything wrong with that. And I think if you know very clearly certain things that you really are about and you want to help create, that makes a great team captain. Like, okay, this is what I stand for. This is what I represent. And people who feel this way should want to work with me. So that makes making our teams, so to speak, easier because I do agree that it would be disastrous if we all tried working on the exact same project together because there's so many ways to do this. And there's no reason to limit ourselves or have to pick A or B. It can be both and.
So I have wanted to work alone often whenever it is that I'm employed by someone. And often whenever I'm doing art, I want to have more of a canvas control. But I joined a local restaurant's garden team a few years ago and was released from that whenever the team sort of mutinied against me. It was great. The team leader wanted me gone because there was just some understanding of like they wanted me to work closer with them, and I wanted to sort of be like, okay, this is my task. I'm going to get it done within the next 3 hours or something. So I could use some brushing up on understanding of what's healthy.
Do you identify as more introverted?
I'm definitely introverted.
So conventional communities, unfortunately, are many of the ones I've seen, extroverts thrive and the introverts kind of come there to die because they often don't have enough safe space. They don't have the autonomy that they want, that kind of stuff. And I travel to these different communities with my best friends who's super introverted. And unfortunately, it became very stressful on him over time. So he's been in a space of recovery from that. But it's important thing to recognize is that is one of your needs. You need to have a safe space. You need to have autonomy to be able to work on things on your own, that kind of stuff. So being really clear about that is really important, because some people think of communities where you're always holding hands and you're always in somebody else's space and you're doing everything together. And there are communities like that, and that's not going to be a good fit for you. So knowing that is super important.
Now, careful when you're talking about personalities. Eco and I may start talking about our zodiac signs and how that fits into community. But it would be interesting to know where we might fit on the teams. I certainly can understand Empty's thoughts on not discussing the personal things or the things that are integral to that. And it would be nice to know what are the differences I might fit in, where the team is I would fit in to, where that I might be placed. I know I've been called also a conservative hippie before, or things like that. But then there's other people that think I'm a really, I guess, whatever hippie. And so, but I get along with both groups. I can assess different views and accept it. And maybe within a community, there's multiple teams, but there's going to be, I know the past stream, Hex Dragon talked about kind of the main things, which were your food, your shelter, your water, your security. And then I know a big thing I've heard in communities as well is the relationships, either whether it's sex, whether it's just getting along with each other, whether it's personalities. Those things are also a big topic within a community. But I certainly agree with the main ones. Do we agree on the food, the shelter, the water, the security? And then other thing is nuance, or are there disagreements within those main things, those topics that we would want to team up and say, hey, this team is more personality-wise this way, or they might understand food, shelter differently, but still part of the same community, I suppose, is the question I might have.
So I'm unmuted now. Okay. So I like the conglomeration or a network of communities. This is an important concept, which I will continue to do with or without any support or anyone helping me until it occurs. You know what I mean? So, because if you have a community, right now I see a lot of these as being standalone communities. They don't have a lot of trade between them, you know, and I think such things will be developed. And some people are going to kick back a little bit on that because they're going to say, well, that's not local. And they're right. It's not local. I think that they're important. Because what happens if there's a drought in one area? Well, then local isn't going to work for you. You know what I mean? For the people that are getting the drought. So, and so trade is one thing that I will eventually try to establish. The first thing I'm going to establish, and with or without anyone's support, is a small team of 7 people who are willing to do a semi-nomadic thing, which will be able, I can show them 7 people who have the skills and the motivation and the energy to do certain tasks that the community that they're entering need assistance on, and haven't ever been able to have enough labor to take care of those issues. Because you can go out and get labor from Home Depot or wherever, and you'll get skilled people, but the intent of what you're trying to do is going to be a whole lot different with a group of people who have both the skills and the intent behind what they're doing. So you could say it's a management issue, and you would be right. Say that well, it's just you being able to manage the labor that doesn't have the intent. But it's a whole different quality when you show up with the people who have that very intent that the people on the property generally hold as true. And so I believe in getting things done quickly, and so I, in some cases, yes, absolutely, bring in labor that doesn't have the intent and get it done quick. This I agree with, but it'd be nice to have a group of people whose faces other communities begin to see on a regular basis. Hey, we're going to show up in harvest time because we know that this place needs during harvest time XYZ, and they don't have enough people to take care of it. Or we show up over to this place and we'll finish off their whatever, their dam, or their structure that they haven't ever finished off because they don't have enough people to finish off in one season. So, and once they start to trust this group of people that they see show up, once you do a lot of work for them, suddenly the trust is there. You know what I mean? Then you can start to bring in trade. Hey, you know what? Those people over there, they need XYZ, and you have it, and they don't. Why don't you let us transport it there and see what they want in return for that? You know, and now suddenly you have trust between communities via this semi-nomadic group. So, and I'm doing this for my purpose. It's not altruistic. My purpose is, if I am welcome at a number, and right now I'm welcome at 3 different places, Wheaton Labs being one of them, then what I have for myself is security. If one place gets wiped out by a natural disaster or a forest or a hurricane, then I'm seeing Max's response. So, so this is my intent. What I intend to do in the background, with or without support, is to create a questionnaire, an online questionnaire that is as non-suggestive questions as possible, so that people can sort themselves out. And so this is the type of thing I intend to do. And then, you know, if people ignore the questionnaire and not interested in it on Hex Foodies, that's okay with me. You know, if 10 of them take this questionnaire, that's also okay with me. So my goal is to create a system in which people sort themselves out according to what they like and they don't like. Now, when you actually have done real work and you've actually created something where you can live in it, you've created something where you can eat off of it, and you have a clear idea of what you want, then you can actually have something to say. If you don't, I agree with Hex Dragon, you can do a lot of talking. And unfortunately, that talking means nothing until you actually experience it. So that's why I don't want to have that discussion about hardcore facts, like how big do you want? And I personally think, and if people want to disagree with me, that's great. I don't mind that at all. 150 makes sense. It's supported by the Dunbar number. It's supported by the Hutterites, who actually have done multi-generations of their communities. And what I am curious about is the seed group. When they break off 50 people, the Hutterites break off 50 people. Marson at OSE believes that he needs 30 people just for the amount of labor that is required for a community. So that's where I'm coming from. So you can see, we don't disagree. We just have different flavors. And I'm more interested in talking to you face to face than I am interested in, having a group discussion trying to say, well, what is the difference? Well, if you don't know what you want and you haven't lived it, then all the talking in the world isn't going to do you any good. I'm going to mute myself again.
All right. Well, I do like that you just shared a little bit more clarity around wanting to create a nomadic lifestyle, which I'd also consider a very wealthy lifestyle, because wealth is what we have access to. So having access to a bunch of different places to live and work and to get to have that change of scenery is definitely something that I've wanted in my life, and think that's a beautiful way to go. And also it feels very natural. I love that instead of trying to stay in a place when the seasons are really not hospitable, you're able to move somewhere else that's really nice. So I applaud that lifestyle, and I wish you the most success possible in that, because it is very challenging to do. But I like your approach, working with existing places instead of building everything from scratch, and having a small team, knowing that you want about like 7 close people to do this with, feels real solid. That's a really healthy start, I think. So we mentioned before with community numbers that about a half dozen is one of those resonant numbers, and that about a dozen you have a lot of dissonance, and then it resonates again around like 60, and then falls apart, and then keeps doing that pattern. So cool. Thank you for sharing. I did a little bit more understanding there, and I'm happy with everything you're saying. So I think that's beautiful. And I think Rogue had a really, really important point that was almost glossed over, and I want to highlight that also, which is we talked about what we want in a community and what it does, which is like water, energy, food, shelter. That's like basic needs survival. But without having a social system and having a agreed upon method of communication, that community is doomed, because there's going to be conflict. Like right now, we're learning how to communicate with each other, and we have different ways of speaking because we come from different places, and it's cool. We all have a positive intention. While David's farm group that he was a part of, they had no interest in actually him being successful. They felt uncomfortable by him wanting to do his own thing, and so instead of communicating with him, they just like found a way to remove him. And we see this a lot in community, where they don't have the maturity or the level of skills necessary. So it ends up feeling like you're in middle school or something else, where you have these different little teams coming together to have an in group and an out group. And it becomes really toxic really fast. Everyone's talking about each other, this kind of stuff. There's no conflict resolution. So one of the really important things for any community is having conflict resolution. I would argue personal development. I'm actually going to be putting together a group for the Hex community that does a lot of personal development, because I'm starting to see a need arise for people who want to better themselves. And many people not be aware of how amazing personal development can be and how transformative it can be in your life, and allowing you to thrive in larger groups. So I think that communication is a topic that needs to be discussed hand in hand with what types of communities we want to create. Because if we don't know how we're going to have conflict resolution, we're just going to have unending conflict.
What y'all got to say about that?
Somebody, I think it might have been Hex Dragon, had mentioned wealth, and not in the terms of monetary. That was a good note, to not define wealth in just monetary terms. But we do have a community right now as Hexicans where we are going to have this wealth. We're going to experience the either sudden wealth syndrome or more wealth. And the community, if you look at it, probably are not interested in this either nomadic living or permaculture or food, and they're okay with getting watches and McLarens, and that's cool. I don't mind that stuff, but there is another aspect to it where we may say, but there's more important things. What happens when the grid goes down? What happens when your supply chain's gone? What happens first? And that's kind of what our community is doing, is we're saying, hey, there's a better way than this on-grid thinking of wealth, accumulating all these things that may not create the regenerative or the survival of something that may happen if a oppressive government says, hey, yeah, you might be wealthy, but we're going to cut you off electric wise, we're going to cut you off this wise, and now what are you going to do with how are you going to fill up your McLaren? How are you going to power or generate your watch? So we may have enough financial means to purchase those things, but we also right now are thinking ahead and saying, hey, let's go to the next level and say, what are the skills we need? What's the community we're getting along with? Like EP was saying, what have we actually done in real life to experience that? Because I know I have a community that are people that will say, yeah, I like to do food storage, or I like to grow my own, or butcher this and that, but they've never done it. And when they actually do, it's a lot more difficult. And they say, okay, well, there's a Costco. That's just so much easier. So living it and doing it is pretty important. So that I just wanted to bring that up, and that might be why I may say it's important to know where we're kind of coming from, as far as this is the team we think you're more into, or these are the differences, just so that we can say, is the difference that you're more into gathering something that may not be supportive in this community, and then that's cool to do, but it may not make a good fit. And that was one thought.
Empty, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, to me, it's just a matter of level of conflict, not the elimination of conflict. You're always going to have friction between people. That's impossible to dispense with. So rather than, I've thought about this a little bit, and like how, like some communities make this like their main point, like the chatters were suggesting there's entire communities dedicated to communication. And there's validity in that, there's validity in that. However, when people show up, they're going to show up with different motivations. And you don't get to decide what those motivations are. And you don't get to change those motivations unless they decide to change those motivations. Now, you can be an influencer, but you don't get the right to change them inside. That's not going to happen. So my opinion is, and you're perfectly welcome to disagree with me, 17.5 or 7.175, but that's 17 cents and a half as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so my opinion is that I thought of, that while I was at OSE, because I did stay there for a short time. I'm the one who came up with the phrase, let people sort themselves out. And now he's using that phrase a lot. And the reason is because it works. It works because if you set up people who have some types of motivation, now Carl Jung says there's 72 archetypes. So maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, But the point is that there are a variety of motivations that can be generally cataloged. So if you allow these motivations to lead themselves to their goal, this is the awesome way, because now you don't have to convince them of a social structure you're going to implement on them. They're going to find their own social structure, whether you like it or not. And so best to make these places where they can go. This is what I noticed at Wheaton Labs. If you sort out, you can smack them out manually, but it's better to give them a route to go. Say, okay, you know what? We think that you seem to have these kinds of aptitudes, or come with us to go to this visit over here to this group of people. And those people, they're going to like, oh yeah, this is my people. And they're not they miss out loud, but they'll look around and, oh yeah, I like it here. You know what I mean? And some people will argue with me and say, no, that's making a bunch of mono communities. They might be right. There might be some validity to this. But the more sophisticated a person becomes, the more awareness that they have, and they will only do this by choice inside. You cannot force them. That's the lesson at Wheaton Labs. You cannot force people to change. You can inform them, you can give them choices, but you cannot put a stand in them inside. It's not going to happen. So you can do is provide them avenues, go the direction that they're going to go anyway. And so one of the things that I thought of is have a place that I would call the Wild West, so that I would have them, the people who I'm least interested in having in my community, I can let them sort themselves down until it becomes obvious that they want to belong in the Wild West. And if they want to belong in the Wild West, why not allow a person to have a Wild West place? Maybe the most interesting things will evolve out of the Wild West, not for me to say. So this is my approach, and I'm going to mute my mic now.
That's cool. Well, there are a few interesting things said about community and wants and wealth and riches. And one thing I see, and I'm curious about your all's take on this also, is right now Richard is doing a stream and he's focused on watches, which is very materialistic. And I feel like there's this encouragement for hexagons to become more materialistic instead of recognizing that whether or not you want to accept it, you're a part of the natural community. And we all are. And that's what it means to be human, is you're connected to life all around you, the people all around you. We are interconnected. We are dependent on each other. It's just, what is our personal role? We're awake enough to know that we have an impact on our environment, and how is our impact affecting other people around us? If we're being hyper consumers, like, what's the consequence of that? One thought exercise I like to put out for people is, okay, let's say that SENS research is successful and we now have radically extended the human lifespan by about 10x. You now have centuries to live. So you used to care about what clothes you had on and getting laid. Now you're like, hey, I'm going to be around for centuries, and right now Earth has about 30 years left before we hit like catastrophic problems, according to like all the scientists. So maybe instead of buying a stupid ass watch, I am going to invest in regenerating the landscape so I can be sure that I will have a safe place to live, and by extension, those I care about, in that relatively near future. 30 years seems pretty far off if you're going to only live to be 70. But if you're going to live to be 600, that's not far off at all. So we need to start changing our perception about what's important. And materialism is one of those stupid things. Like, new people get rich, they get money they never had before, they buy some stupid stuff, and then they're broke. And that's what we're going to see a lot of. We're going to see a lot of hexagons becoming broke hexagons because they're going to burn through their wealth really fast. It happens a lot in crypto. And unless you have experience having wealth, you're going to become poor again. We see it all the time. Somebody wins the lottery, a year later they're broke. It doesn't matter. Giving people a bunch of money in a consumeristic society just enables them to buy more dumb stuff faster and then become broke faster. And especially when they're feeling weird about it. Like, oh, I got Sentimental syndrome. I want to get back to my homeostasis, which was being broke and complaining all the time. So people are going to do that. So that's why I think providing opportunities for this community to gain more skills and more tools to be successful in life is super important, which is where education comes in. I used to be a technocrat. I was following Kurzweil and everybody else, thinking that our future was technology. And I had a very large indoor greenhouse where I was producing a lot of medicine and making a crap ton of money, and I was doing hydroponics for everything. And I thought that was the future. But then I realized that the earth is just so much better. There was so much I didn't know because I went down this narrow-minded streamline or pipeline of our education system. And you're not taught regeneration any step of the way. So part of what we need to do is bring awareness that there's a much better way of living out there than people are aware of. People are eating junk food. They aren't reaching their happiness, their potential happiness, because it limits you. And most people don't understand the biochemistry that goes on in your body. People think that farming is a lot of work, and it can be a lot of work. But if you're looking at conventional agriculture versus comparing that to making these permaculture food forests that you just have to harvest instead of having to plan to maintain the vehicles and that kind of stuff, it's a lot easier. So we need to provide this information for everyone to understand that there are better ways of living, and these better ways of living don't have anything to do with materialism. They have to do with having a very high quality of life. It doesn't matter how many Rolexes you're wearing or whatever. When you have healthy food provided for you, when you're living in a healthy home, when you have meaningful relationships all around you, like that's what real wealth ultimately is. If you're just chasing people liking you because you're a consumer, you're going to be living a very shallow life, and you're always going to be empty.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about that. It almost seems to me like we have to throw a dash of social trend in order to allow something to grow naturally. I have some other points to talk about in that, but they sort of escaped me right now.
I use the private chat comment window to take notes. So
Yeah, very good.
Can I make a quick comment on some of the things Hexdragon was saying? I like the points you made, and to speak to the SENS Foundation, some of my I guess cognitive dissonance on that is the idea of extending life. What do we do as we're living longer? How does that affect things? And I know Richard's kind of addressed that, and they've had a discussion with the SENS Foundation. It's been really good. I like what Empty Plane said. Let people sort themselves out. So if there's going to be people that have that view, let them figure it out. Let them come to their conclusions. I really like that. That's great. One thing that I've kind of concluded is I've followed this, I guess a shamanic practitioner. He doesn't claim to be, but he wrote a book called Die Wise, Stephen Jenkinson. And he talks about he was in a hospice field for years. And he talked about people in society. He used the term death phobic. And so as the death phobic culture kind of avoided that inevitable that's going to happen to us, we put it off, and then when it came, we never embraced it enough. And it was this fearful thing, and it was this big anxiety around dying, and it was pretty interesting. So there's a different perspective on the longevity side of things that I found interesting myself, and again, let people sort themselves out and figure out what they're thinking. But the idea that I've kind of concluded is we can only put it off for so long, and at some point we have to come to the conclusion that this whole thing is going to end, and what's next, and what community is next. But it's a pretty good book. Die Wise, Stephen Jenkinson, check it out. It may be an alternative perspective to the SENS Foundation longevity, which I understand they're trying to do something noble and altruistic in their approach to have people live longer, but there are other perspectives in that.
real quick, Rogue, how much life experience do you need to have before you think you're wise?
Yeah, I think the response that the Die Wise book would give is we've lost a little bit of that wisdom with our elders as you get older. But what is wisdom? Is it you can be really young and have wisdom. Wisdom is the application of knowledge. It depends on how you define wisdom. Is it the application of knowledge, or is it information? Does somebody know a lot of things, a lot of facts, and can memorize? Is that wisdom? Or is it applying that into somebody's life? Is that wisdom? And I don't think you have to have years of that to be applicable in your wisdom. And whether there's a great answer for that or not, I'm not too sure.
I like your answer, and I would say that, like, for example, I like to believe, I can't factually say that many indigenous cultures were very wise, and you were taught a lot of wisdom from a young age, and it was passed on. There was a lot of focus on that, and what's important. I would say that our modern societies are quite stupid. They really don't know much, and we're constantly being made distracted and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of just like you work all day, then you recover then you work and you recover and you work and recover. You have no time for life. You have no time for integration or anything else like that. So in a modern day where we have all these conveniences and we don't have to hunt our own food, even grow our own food, we can have somebody else do all that kind of stuff. We don't have to work. We can just be sloths. I might be totally mistaken in thinking that giving people more life would give them time to think about some of the problems in the future, because right now I believe that people are using death as a cop out. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to die soon, so I'm not going to worry about these problems that won't affect me. So I'm of the belief that maybe people were going to live longer, they would start to take on some of these things. But I might be totally wrong, and it could actually just be like, you know what? It's the same thing with like, who's going to clean the kitchen? Oh, well, if you're in a community, somebody else to clean the kitchen. Somebody else to do this. Somebody else to take care of that. And then what happens? Nobody does anything. Maybe that's what would happen anyway, so it might be totally pointless. Or maybe a few people will start stepping up, self-actualizing, like you get more Richards, more other great people who are putting a lot of effort into the world, and now that they have more time to do that, they can have even more great contributions. So maybe it still will be the maintaining of a society in which 1 in 1,000 people are productive, everybody else is just kind of like filling in the gaps.
Sure. Yeah. So maybe more time gives them that opportunity to become more wise when it comes to purpose. Sounds like what you're saying.
And that's at least what I see a lot of in Austin is I love Austin. I've been here longer than anywhere else because there's so much personal development. There's so much interest in consciousness and like waking up and becoming more and more connected to reality, more connected to each other. It's a really fun place to explore that. And there's people of all ages exploring this. So I'm hosting a workshop this weekend, and we're going to have people who are in their early 20s to their late 60s there. And they will all level up during this workshop. And almost everyone's going to have a life-changing experience, and then they're going to want more of it. And it becomes this, once you enter like a path of personal development, it's something to work on. Now, instead of working in your house or acquiring all these different things, the way consumers do, you start working on yourself. Like, how can I become a better version of myself? How can I start upgrading myself? And that's what gets really exciting for me, is that the people who are in these communities, they aren't keeping up with the Joneses, trying to have the next best thing or whatever. That doesn't matter. You realize that you are your product that matters, and how you get connected to people. And it's these connections that ultimately matter, not junk on your wrists or your whatever. So I can talk about that for a long time, but I'd like to pass the floor.
Well, I think that wisdom is not necessarily time dependent. You could die foolish if you wanted to. Yeah. So back to like sort yourself out business. You think that you will find, and this is what we discovered at Wheaton Lab for a short period of time when we had a chance to actually affect who was coming in and who wasn't. We changed the bar of entry so things were slightly more complicated, and we got more intelligent people that showed up and more skilled people that showed up. And that group of people also were interested in, I guess, the least, the most secular term for it would be self-actualization. They showed up interested in that or doing practices already. And so in this way, and then those people that might have interest can be invited, or if they're asking about it, you can show them. But you most certainly can't grab them by the ear and say, looky here now, you got to behave like this. It isn't going to work. You know?
I like what y'all are saying because I am a experiential type person. I'm not much of a planner. If I got the energy, let's do it.
Okay, so now we're talking. So if I were to kick off something that we can immediately start practicing in real life, other than live streaming, which is awesome. I'm glad you guys arranged this, and I'm glad you're taking time out of your personal life to do this. Um, uh, so what would be awesome is to have our first place, like 5 acres, just a 5-acre place where people can come in. We can educate people. We can have all the permaculture technology. We can have all the food there in a very small scale. And in this way, this will be our sorting mechanism. Okay, this is just my crazy idea. If you all can say, no, I don't care. But this is what I would do. I would create, this would be my my sorting device. That 5 acres, all the systems on it would be my sorting device. So that when people came in, I could see whether they wanted to raise and eat animals. I don't have to ask them, are you vegetarian? Oh yeah, but not all the time. You know what I mean? I would know whether they were vegan or not. It would be obvious because that's what they were eating. You know what I mean? I don't have to ask them questions. It's obvious. And so then I can start sorting them. I can say, hey, you know what? Seems like you're interested in that. Is that correct? And if they're consciously aware of what they're doing, they'll say yes. You know, I mean, if they're not conscious, maybe they're saying, well, that's what I feel most comfortable in, but I'd like to learn this stuff over here. That's awesome too. See what I'm saying? Now you start to learn in real time what the person is about. And then from that, you can find the people that you want to create XYZ with or ABC with. You know what I mean? And this is a very real-time, immediate thing to get off the ground because if you do cool things, cool people will show up. And it's my opinion that, and I might be entirely wrong, for every negative person, you need 7 people who are very positive and can help uplift that person. You can't show up with 7 negative people and hope that one person in that community can take 7 negative, really super negative people and lift all 7 of those. That's a tremendous burden on that one person. Maybe it's possible. I certainly couldn't do it. So, and in this way, you can, maybe you don't like my Wild West idea, but I love that idea because then you're not discarding the people that you personally don't like, or your own value system doesn't like, or even your own flavor doesn't like. You give them a chance to exist. You show a place where there's another step where it's okay for them to do Wild West, but they have to purchase their own property and risk their own Wild West behavior on their own property. And there's places like that in New Mexico. There's places like that in Arizona. That would make it the perfect experimentation for their own personal recognition. Oh, this is a mistake that I think like this. Or they may never come to that conclusion. They'll just say, damn, this sucked. I'll go suck somewhere else. They won't say that, but I'll go do something else instead of community. But at least they had a chance. You know what I mean? So and then those people that want to rise up to self-actualization start to realize, you know what? There's something else going on here. What is it? And then they'll start asking questions like, hey, what is that Hex Dragon doing over there with that group of people? I kind of like that group of people. I kind of like that vibe. Let's go hang out. Let's ask some questions about him. And so in this way, people will be attracted to things that they're motivated for, and you won't have to motivate them. You won't have to educate them. They will be drawn to it, and through this drawing, and if you provide all the information and guidance, they will become educated simply out of their own motivation and with a good guide. So this is kind of my opinion. So if you know of a place where you guys are comfortable getting 5 acres and you want to immediately get started, that's what I would do. Because then you can say, hey, we've got the real thing right here. This is what we're doing. You want to get in on it at the baseline, just like you on Hex on the baseline, right here on this 5 acres, show up, do XYZ. And XYZ could be a lot of things. So I'm going to mute myself. I can see Devin wants.
Well, that sounds like it's some sort of a filter. So I'd like to understand what progression needs to take place where somebody finally finds themselves at the place where they want to be, and life is peaceful and it's going the pace that they like, and they're useful at their job. They have reverberation throughout the community, from, say, somebody that's working at the corporate world who's watching this video. By the way, we have a Telegram group that's Hex Foodies at the Telegram. What would be like, this property would be right here, right after they jump corporate world and they say, hey, I want to try my hand. And it's kind of like a, dare I say, dude ranch. It's a little ranch that we've got located in some sort of climate that, is maybe regionally located based on the temperatures that they're used to and the temperatures that they'll eventually arrive at. Okay, I'm done.
So yes, I have a general outline in my head about how to bring that to fruition, how to help guide people. I can start talking about practically what I'm doing immediately. So the first thing I've done is I found places that are rent-free in cities. People can earn a lot, $15 an hour minimum wage. Okay, so I look at the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, they can make $15 an hour. Can you do that in Montana? Oh no, $8 an hour. You know what I mean? That's that's not happy. You're not going to be able to stash cash. So in finding these places that are rent free, in where the wage is extremely high, now I can give people an economic way to help get off the grid during the winters. And they can experience off-grid life during the summers. And in this way, a very practical, real way, and this gives them a chance to develop both the skills in the summer, and then also enjoy the fact that they're going to have, some of them have never had $6,000 in their pocket at the moment, right? In one time. No, they've never had the chance to actually have that in their hand, in their bank account or anything. So to experience that is extremely empowering. And so my issue is trying to attract the people that are, it's a trust matter. And right now I have one person who's joining me, and we're going to walk away with $6,000. And now the first time I came back to Wheaton Labs, with all of a sudden I came back from Nepal with only a backpack and 2 changes of clothes. Now I came back with 2 vehicles, came back with a solar system that supported all my tool needs. I came up with all the tools that are battery powered, including the battery powered chainsaw, all the necessary hand implements that I needed. And then people are like, well, he really did do that. And now they're looking at my structure and they're like, well, he really did it. That's the first building we've seen go up in that village in how many years? And so once you do this, once you create trust and they see, oh yeah, I can do that. Of course I want to make money without paying rent, But then what I want to do is I'm going to curtail, I'm going to say one more thing and then I'll stop. I'll create an escrow account where if you're going to come and do this with me, you're going to only get 15% of that money taken out of the escrow account if you choose to go back to your city life and never go back, to the off-grid life. But if you choose, to the off-grid life for the summer, then you get that full amount, so the full amount that they've saved. And in this way, I don't have people that are taking advantage of just the low rent issue, and that happened to Paul in some cases. So, so I have a very clear idea of how to do it practically for people who don't have any money. And then who have money, I have thought of methods to, help them go through the other side. So there's people who love wells. They could easily buy their own, they're not quite sure. They think they know, but they're not real quite sure. And so we could very easily give them both the tools and the sources of information if they wanted to research it themselves, all the way down to the person who has zero cash and wants to get out of the cities and into off-grid life. So I've thought carefully about the practical, pragmatic funnels that you can take people through. And now I just need to sketch out a final draft so that it's articulated, you know what I mean, well in writing, and you can see how people can sort themselves out any way they want to. I did that for OSE, and they I don't know how much of that remained. The slogan remained there, but I don't know about the avenues remaining there. So I think this is a very cool way. And then Hex Dragon, the people that are really interested in self-actualization, believe me, you'll know it. They'll show up. They will show up to your, whatever method that you offer them that fits their proclivity will show up. And they will show up maybe already doing it. That's what we discovered. We found out there's a high number of people meditation that showed up from Wheaton Labs when we sorted, when we created certain trickier barriers for people. They're already doing this. So we didn't have to say, well, if you want to be part of our group, you have to do X, Y, Z. I thought about doing this. I thought about, okay, if you want to be on my team, you're going to have to do a particular type of yoga. You're going to have to do a certain type of meditation. I was thinking about all these things that I would make as a requirement. And then I realized, you know what? After watching Wheaton Labs, I'm not doing that. I'm going to let them sort themselves out. They're going to come up and say, hey, I want to try that yoga. And the first time they're like, oh, man, that sucked. I don't want to do that. They're not going to say that to you, but they're just not going to show up next time, And therefore, that they don't belong in this particular team, or this particular community. And you have to introduce each other there because it's just going to cause everybody. And then you can take that person and say, okay, well, it appears that they're like this. Let's let them visit this place and see how well they actually thrive. And if they're like happy clams, then, of course, there's always going to be friction. Anytime you bring in a new plant, it displaces something. You bring in a new animal, it displaces something. There's always friction. You can't get away from that. So with the people who are interested in communication skills, you can show them, those people who don't care about communication skills, they're going to show up and it's going to have zero effect on them. If they have zero motivation and they have anti-motivation, as I call it, there's not going to be a shift in them at all. It has to be motivation from inside. And so this is why I believe in sorting people out. And I've taken way too much time here. Let me get.
So actually, I have a question for you. So you have this idea of sorting people out, and I love what the common thread is, that providing people with these different opportunities to discover what they're interested in. That's all great. I'm all for that. But I also believe that this idea of sorting people out on the spot, I've seen it. I'm actually at a property that tried doing exactly that, and it was the worst idea ever. And the reason is because this place was, you come here, what do you want to do? Do what you want, figure out what you want to do. Come here, whatever you want is fine. They had over 60 people go through this place within a year. None of them remained because there was so much conflict, so much disorganization. Nothing was done. There was no purpose for what was happening. There was no organization. The people who were passionate got drove out by the people who were mooching. And there was a constant battle of kicking out the people who didn't fit in, because you had people move here from across the country thinking that they could do whatever they wanted, to then find out that there's a conflict, and they had no conflict resolution skills. So everybody's angry at each other. And,
okay, so
and I'm almost done. And then they're like, oh, well, you didn't work out, so you need to go. Okay, well, I just sold my stuff to move here. I just quit my job to move here. All those kinds of stories. So it's like, okay, well, sorry, go be homeless in Austin, or try and find a job like that. I feel it's unethical to have people come into a space to try out something and not have a solid plan for them to be able to move on if they don't work out, but also not having a clear purpose or a clear way in which they can participate. And I've seen this in many other communities too, where they allow people to come in and then the community will basically extricate those who don't fit, but they destroy lives in the process. And so that method works, but there's a lot of casualties and a lot of people get very raw about the idea of community afterwards.
Okay, so I have two responses because you brought up two different things. You're suggesting that the idea doesn't work in practicality, and then you're suggesting that it's harsh on the people. I have two responses to that. Do you know who Tom Brown Jr. is? Okay, Tom Brown Jr. is, you can Google him. I suggest that you do that after or during. It works in his community.
Mhm.
And it works very successful, and he has very many people who follow him, participate in his communities. So I know how to do it correctly. I paid attention to what he did to address that part. That's why I have the escrow account. If you come to our community, you have to put down $1,000, or depending on the financial situation around us, that will help you leave the place. And that is your leave the property monies. Any interest in that, and then you also kind of have a deposit in case they destroy stuff. But more, it's an exit money. So the exit money is very crucial because I've seen exactly what you're talking about. You show up to a place and then they're just kicking people to the curb, and the whole external community is pissed off because they have these homeless people suddenly appear as a product of this intentional community. That's not cool. So understanding that if you're going to have standards and you're going to ask people to leave or visit another place and they don't want to visit that place, well, okay, fine. We have a going away party for you. So what we do is after 3 months, we used to say we want you to come. People are only going to want to come for a weekend. People are going to want to come for a week. But if somebody is saying they're serious and they want to show up for a long term and they don't know how long term that is, say we want you to try it out for 3 months. At the end of the month, we'll have a party, and that party is either going to be your going away party because you or us is not working for us, or it's going to be a housewarming, party so that you have your own little space to work in. And
So
we
now,
don't know which way.
really quick, speaking of people having to leave, I'm going to have to cut it a little short. Sorry about that. This discussion is good. It's good to talk about the community. I may head out, but I think just to add really quickly, this may be why Eco and I and Hexray were visiting these other communities to hash some of this stuff out. The discussion's great. Continue it on. But it was helpful for us to see a community, how it's set up, and your experiences with your communities. And then as we go to other communities and take notes to say, this is what we're liking. We like the escrow part. We like this part, what makes sense, and bring it all in. That may be helpful, but I have just a few minutes and then I got to head out. Maybe a housewarming party as I leave. It was good to chat and see everybody.
Thanks for spending the time.
So yeah, that's what I would do, and I've had the people that ending up homeless, and so I think that's an awesome, and that also sets the bar a certain way. So let's say you meet somebody who don't have enough money to live 1 month and put that one money in an escrow account. Let's say they don't have it. Then I have a solution for them. Come work with me in the winter, and then in that case, you will end up homeless because if you choose not to work, then I'm sorry, you got to go. So, but that's a worst case scenario. You know what I mean? And if you don't have any money, you have no intentions of getting any money, and you have, and it's just your intent to ride along, well, that's not going to end well for anybody. And there are going to be cases like that happen. But if you make the bar generally that if you say there has to be at least $1,000 in escrow, and a person can do that can take them 2 years maybe because their disposable income is not that great. It might take them 2 years, but that person's going to be serious when they show up because they've been saving that for 2 years. So, and the person that doesn't have anything, how seriously can we take them? Well, we can invite them to for a couple of days, 3 days, 4 days, and see how well they then say, okay, we can clearly see this person has no skill, has no intention on really working hard, have no intention of making anything go. We're not even going to tell them about Orin's winter money making process. So there's a whole bunch of ways that you can handle people in and get things up and running so that they do sort themselves out. You do have a hidden structure, but you don't tell people what that hidden structure is, and you have an exit plan that's positive. Say, you know what, we're really glad that you were able to spend 3 months with us, and you can highlight all the good things that they did do, assuming that they did do some good things in 3 months. Then you can highlight those things and say, we thank you for this. We think you're a good person, but as a fit for our specific community, we feel that it would be better for both of us for you to leave and then come back and try it in 3 years again. Well, and that way you leave the door open in case they change too, you know. And then and if they're really dissatisfied, they'll be secretly relieved and not show up in 3 years, you know. So yeah.
So I can tell you definitely thought a lot about this, and you have some very solid ways of doing it. I would a tool I'd like to share with you. It's called Community Canvas, and you can
It's
find
called what?
Community Canvas, and it's communitycanvas.org, I believe. And it has a list of, basically it's a framework for creating a community. It's just questions. You have to answer all the questions yourself. And because what you're pointing out are all the nuances of a way to create a community that can be successful. So writing that down to have that clarity, because I do think transparency is important. And also if you want to onboard people to your project, people are going to want to see some of this. And so that way we can also be like, well, look, this is what you said we were doing, instead of it being like, hey, Empty, how do we do this? Oh, okay. Well, hey, Empty, how do we do this? Oh, okay. Like, so instead of everybody having to come to you as the authoritarian source of knowledge, you have it in a document that is centralized and shared, so that people know what they're getting into, what your vision is. And these questions are really great. This is so I think filling that out to be able to share would be really excellent, because it sounds like you have an approach for helping a lot of people in need get to a sustainable point. And that's a very specific demographic and a very specific approach that some people can be very drawn to and others are going to not be interested in. So I think that would be a wonderful thing to get clear on, so you can start attracting the right people for that project. And I will say that, I see it being completely valid, and there being a good chance of success. And I have a very different approach that I want to also take. And so I respect that. And I think having that clarity of differences is going to make people who might be interested in one or another have that clarity, so they can make a better decision for what they want to jump into.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to reply to the authoritarian statement. What I'm suggesting is not authoritarian.
No, I'm not calling you authoritarian. What I'm saying is if you're the knowledge keeper, you're the only person who knows how the community is going to come, they have to go to you as the source. That's all I meant by that.
Yeah, and I'm saying that's not the case. What you do is you present what you expect from them. You present what you're about. And in this case, you've provided a structure in which they can choose to recognize it or not recognize it. The hidden part is the guidance in and out of the community. Mm-hmm. So that's the hidden part. Secondly, I've only talked about the lower demographic because that's the most difficult demographic. That is the least easy to handle. Notice that I did talk about WELS earlier, and that we can help them. We can educate them. We can direct them. So no, I haven't talked about the upper end of that, but I have that laid out also. You don't necessarily have to agree with it, and that's why I know you and I don't belong on the team. You know what I mean? We have different approaches, and I'm glad that we have diversity here in our approaches, And so what I want to do is see you be successful, and I want to see me be successful, and I think both of us will be complementary and not divisive. So that's my take on it. I'm gonna,
Yeah, and that's why I'm offering these tools, because I think these tools are excellent for getting all your ideas out on paper. Because right now in dialogue, it's great, but it's not. Videos are, while they're great in the moment, they're really not a very good way for onboarding people. So having that handbook that's like, hey, this is what we're about. This is how we do all these different things. These are questions I haven't thought of. Super useful. That's a third-party source. I filled it out with a team of people, and we've had dozens of people go through it and add on to it. So we have some. I'll share another episode with y'all. The answers we came up with for inspiration. But the point is that there's infinite combinations of all these things. So as people enter and they start discovering what they like and don't like, they now, as you said also, it's this path. You have more choices for what you want to go through. But when you know what you don't want, it gets simplified and you start getting down to like, okay, I'm just going to go down one of these two paths. You try that out, and then you discover what you want ultimately. So yeah, I think giving people the information up front is very handy. When you don't, and I've seen it where you don't, where you come in there, you do an orientation for a couple of months or whatever, and then it turns out the orientation isn't even true anymore, and you have to like rediscover what kind of community you're in. This is Arcosanti specifically. The people who went through there, they got burned so bad, and they've been getting burned since the 70s, and it's still like that. They still operate that way. So I just see this thing where there's so many people getting hurt, and ultimately I'm just trying to protect people, because a lot of times these people had good intentions, but certain behaviors that we've learned better ways for navigating are, which is why having these conversations is so important. Because when you learn about new communication tools, like, hey, I didn't know about nonviolent communication. What is that? Oh, wow, that's amazing. Or whatever else. Like, we now can be more effective and can help each other upgrade. So
yes. So and again, that's why to avoid people getting burned and can, you know, for decades, that's why I have the entry method and we have an exit method. And the exit method, if they provide an escrow account for us, it makes it a whole lot easier for them to exit. Now, the personal ouch and gotchas, those are going to happen no matter how soft we are with them. There's people who will show up and make ouch gotchas for themselves. It will be totally non-existent. We cannot avoid this. So, but what we can do is do our best to make it a positive entry and a positive exit. So, and that positive exit, again, will be done with an escrow account up front. That takes care of all that, even that $100 that Paul has people send him, that eliminates a number of people, because there's some people that just don't have $100 in any asset for them to come up with. Anyway, they can't even anybody for $100, you know, and those people, I wouldn't want to come with me for a winter unless I'm very personally and understood their circumstances. A few that I would take, but I'm telling you about 5%, 99% I wouldn't want. And the higher end is way easier to take care of. The higher demographic, as in awareness, money doesn't necessarily mean more awareness. It can mean more money, you know, more social sophistication. All those things are much easier to handle at the higher end. But if I start at the bottom and I look at the worst case scenarios, because you're going to have worst case scenarios show up. How can we handle that the best way? How can we keep people from being burned? Escrow account. Very simple solution. And then, yes, you do tell them, it doesn't matter. One thing that we've learned at Wheaton Labs, the majority of people don't care about all the writing that you've done. They won't even care about the videos that you've done. Only a certain demographic will. Only a certain demographic will actually read all that stuff. There's only a certain demographic that will actually understand and take the time to understand that. The rest of them are just interested in go check out this place and live there. And they're in their enthusiasm because they've heard about permaculture, they have an idea what they think that means. They just want to show up and enjoy it. And they have no intentions of reading or becoming educated on that before they show up. So yes, I put out the idea, what's hidden, and what you probably have an offense to, and I'm not going to change that, is that I have a hidden structure that guides them through the process. And that's probably what there's an issue with. And that hidden structure will actually keep, you saw happening at the people that show up, and then, have those 60 people turn over again and again and again. With that, we keep the people that are interested in being with us, and we have a nice party and a financial way for them to leave. That's the best planning that I can think of to help people. So yeah, I would, this is what I see works for the worst case scenario. And then for the high end, life gets easier at each stage. Each stage of awareness, each of sophistication, each stage of financial capability, it gets easier and easier to handle the majority of those people. Now, you're going to have people at every economic level. That's okay. That's the case. We can see certain people, we could always pick our least favorite wealthy person and say, that person's not the one I want to be like, you know what I mean? Or that's not the person I want to live next to me or in my own community house. So, but those problems are way easier to solve. And the person is not going to be easily burned because they have choices. What we have to look at the people who come in who have fewer choices and who will be hurt financially if they don't make a preparation to come and a preparation to leave.
Wow, that's a lot. Should we wrap this up? It's been an hour and 40 minutes. Maybe we can sort of do just a little bit of capping off, a little bit of something to look forward to next time.
Where's the 5 acres you'd like to buy?
Now, that was your idea, right?
Yes, it is.
Where I wanted a clearer understanding of what it was, the structure that you're imagining, to what end and how many people like you are going to be feasting on people, drawing them into your corner. I noticed that you said that sort of thing in the Telegram chat, and I laughed about it because, if you see yourself as a guider, that's awesome. I'm going to read somebody's comment here. Rogue Herbalist in the Telegram Hex Foodies chat just put something from Instagram. Oh, it's another book. So all of the things that are mentioned here, we're putting into the Telegram channel, and then it's saved as a link in the tabs about that, just like photos are saved in a tab. You're muted if you're saying anything.
Yeah. I think now's a really good time to wrap up. I feel a little
cool,
energetically drained. I feel you're doing a call out for land right now. I think, again, I'd recommend the community canvas and make sure that if you're seeking investors, you have a team of people. Now, the reason I like to do a lot of forefront work is, you'd mentioned, I was curious about this, free rent. But how many years guaranteed free rent do you have? Because you don't need to answer. But the reason I ask is because the type of projects that I'm interested in doing, and people who I want to have 3 years, that's not enough to do a lot of permaculture. Like we want to build a food forest and we want to have animals. We want to invest in like all this kind of stuff that we're not going to create that. So I'm looking for offering permanence where people can have something for decades and they know that they're investing in something for future generations.
So the free rent, work in the cities to get you off. That's all it will to get you out of the cities. And I've done the math, I ran the spreadsheets, and I'm proving it at Wheaton Lab. So when I'm done the third year, I will invite you to see how that's possible.
I didn't understand what you were trying to say. So I was talking about having a place to invest long term into, and if you're having a 3-year rent, I don't see that being a long term.
Okay, so free rent in the winter times. What about the summer? Did I say anything about the summer?
So will you clarify then, please, what it was that you
Yeah. Hang on just a second. So the goal for people who do not have the cash to invest. So I just separated your statement. I want people who have the security to invest for 10 years. We're not talking about people who have that kind of money. We can talk about those kind of people. I do have plans for those kind of people. But we're talking about people who do not have monies to invest for 10 years. Then what
I'm
do we
also
do?
misunderstood here.
So
So
free rent, hang on. The free rent is only concerned with those people that need to earn cash to make the escrow, to make their make enough infrastructure money that they can build a place that will allow them to live full time and not come back free rent solution after 3 years. That's very different than years that you can invest in and be guaranteed something at the end of 3 years. That's a very different statement.
okay. So also when I use the word invest, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about time. And so when I say invest in land, I'm talking about putting the effort into building the food forest, putting the effort into everything that's going to be there that's going to grow over time. So that's where I was talking about people coming out and investing their time, energy, and maybe capital. But ultimately, is resources. We don't need to have a lot of capital if you own the land because seeds are cheap when you produce them, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I'm talking about because a person that doesn't have the cash is time. So how do you get from nothing or little to a place to have infrastructure? Well, you're going to have to come up with the finances somehow. So the way I've created that, because in this economy and the way our economy is set up, you can't get out of the system very easily, if at all, if you have very little. It's very hard to get out. So if you have a financial pathway for that demographic to get out, then this is the most successful way, and it takes only 3 years. It actually takes 2, but I'm telling people 3 because then I cover my ass.
Cool. Very good. Thank you for clarifying.
Well, awesome. What are we going to look forward to next time? Like, let's sort of have an understanding of something to sort of like mine our minds for, or at least that would be better for me.
Well, what would you like for next time, David?
I'd like to continue the idea of I really enjoyed Mark Shepard's reviewing his work, his talk, how he talks about what is sustainable and jumping into life like you're jumping onto a treadmill. You're meeting everything where it's at, and you're being an orchestrator of sorts. I guess can we go down that path? can we continue this? Can we continue this to the point where we really get people's understandings tangible?
Yeah, I would love it. So this conversation like helped me highlight a couple of things in that I don't think I want to. So I do want to have conversations about what regeneration is and what is possible, how we can create abundance and all that. So focusing on the commonalities that we have. And I think it'll be separate for discussing our ideals in community. Because again, as we've mentioned, there's an infinite number of ways to do community. We have 2 people here talking about those right now. And I think that should be separate from the food aspect, I feel. So it was an engaging conversation. And I think that it'd be more powerful if you wanted to read MT's plan and take his test and see if you're a good fit or candidate for what he wants to put together. And then maybe have a very specific like discussion when there is something that we can look at, so I can like ask informed questions. Would be nice. But yeah, I think for the next talk, focusing on maybe some of our favorite examples of regenerative projects that have happened, where we took ideally like land that was kind of like damaged and turned it into something amazing, or sharing personal stories. For example, I built a 1 acre homestead on a 214 acre farm in Del Valley to demonstrate exactly what you're talking about, starting small to show people what's possible, see what they're interested in, inviting people out. And all that. And that's actually where the reasoning for wanting long-term investment of land was so important, because we've planted so many trees here, and yet the owner has the land for sale for $5 million. So if it gets sold, it's just going to turn into a development. So that's where I'm talking about security for that. And not wasting people's time. So yeah, I that's what my interest would be for the next conversation.
That sounds great. So examples, if we know of them, of how this theory is actually played out.
Yeah.
Cool. What do you say, Empty? You're muted.
Yeah, I just unmuted it. I'm gonna need 2.5 weeks to flesh it all out, because I'm in the process of hunting income at the moment. So I probably take me 3 days, solid days to do it. But since I'm also chasing money at the moment, it's gonna be a secondary priority. So let's say 3 weeks. So 3 Tuesdays from here, I should have it well outlined.
Cool.
Great. So we could use that as a future topic, and we can put ourselves through it and discuss it. Yeah.
That'd be awesome. I would
Okay.
kind of like to see. Yeah. I kind of like to see where everybody falls out in what I have in mind. It might be that, all I would be good for is just to help you in your endeavors rather than being a long-term member. And I'm perfectly fine with that. That's no problem. My goal is to help as many of these things along in the way that I can, and not get in the way of somebody who has a very specific idea, or they have a specific idea as a group that doesn't match mine necessarily.
And you were going to say something, Hex Dragon?
You've been wanting to do that all stream. Yeah, I mean, I feel good. I think that creating oh, MJ, mute yourself, please. Yeah, I think that I would love the stream to be more than just talking. So I like that we're instilling action, and I'd be happy to share more of my resources that I've published also in the future. And we can talk about that later. That I think, yeah, we should start listing out future streams. That's a good idea.
I'd like to start bringing some of my my local friends here on stream as well. I got some lights just recently and some microphones. and I'm interacting with a friend right now about community, and she's talking about how she wants to buy land and everything. I haven't yet made her a hexagon, so she doesn't have the throne yet, but in time, with everyone in time. So thank you all for coming here and spending so much time here, and it's been wonderful. So let's plan again for 1 week from now. It'll be noon Central. Tuesdays is typically our or what we're making our live streams, and also we're on Telegram at Hex Foodies. Thank you, guys.
Peace.
Adios.